Hello YouTube, the Alpha Hunter has returned and frankly disturbed as well. And that's mainly because of these riots that are going on. Not protests, even though there are areas in which protests are occurring, but the riots that are happening because of a one George Floyd. I'm going to give a brief summary over what happened for the Mr. Floyd so that we all at least are on the same page of my understanding. So Mr. Floyd was at a deli, presumably paying for some food or for some things that he was going to purchase. And he used a $20 bill that the employee found was a counterfeit. Now, you can detect a counterfeit by a couple of ways. First off, they have these counterfeit detector markers that you can actually get out at Office Depot or similar stores. They have a marker that, in which, when scanning over a piece of money, makes two different colors. Now, it could be like a green color, which means it's good money, or it can be a brownish black color, which means that it's counterfeit, which leads me to believe that printed money, or counterfeit, is made of different materials than of the real money minted by the United States government. Another way you can tell if a bill is counterfeit is by having a light shine through it. If you hold it up against the light, usually above you, you'll notice as you're scanning along the bill that there is a little line, kind of like a bluish black line, amidst all of that kind of see-through transparent areas. That's a little tracer for the United States government to keep track of the bills out there, or at least that's as far as I have been informed. If a bill lacks that, then likely it was printed illegally and is a counterfeit. Digression aside, when the officers arrived, presumably being called by either the employee or the manager at the location, they found him to be under the influence. I can only assume that they presumed he was intoxicated by alcohol or something. I don't know. It just says that they found him to be under the influence. And they arrested him on the charges of the forgery and possibly public intoxication. And so they calmly arrested him according to the footage that was shown, and they were walking him to the vehicle they drove in. George Floyd suddenly fell down, and if he was intoxicated, then this would make sense, because if they can't even find balance when walking one foot in front of the other, then perhaps they also have a chance of tripping over themselves. After all, things happen. The police took this as an attempt to resist arrest, and while he was on the ground, all four officers, or three, got on top of him and were holding him down, including the one officer now in question, Officer Derek Chauvin, who had his knee, and from the looks of the picture, his leg, on George's neck. Now, some other videos were coming in showing that while the officers were holding him down, and while Chauvin was holding him down, he repeatedly begged for them to let him go. Mainly to Chauvin to get off of his neck because he's starting to have trouble breathing. And so this actually went on for, if I remember correctly, around 8 minutes. Which, if the brain stops working after 5 minutes from a lack of oxygen, then that's going to be a little bit troubling. But hey, I'm not exactly the kind of expert on that. That's just something I heard. Again, digression aside, the cops, the other 2 or 3 cops said, you know, he's fine, everything's okay, he's down, he's not really struggling that much. But Chauvin still kept holding him down on the neck. George Floyd soon became unconscious and looked like he was dead. The ambulance arrived, and that's when Chauvin got off of his neck and then loaded him into the ambulance to then be sent to the hospital, if I remember correctly. And so that's where they declared him dead. Now, they say it wasn't the asphyxiation from Chauvin, but it was a combination of multiple factors, including the coronary disease, if I remember, and some other things. But a lot of people still kind of put that to question. Even Floyd's family, who then asked for an independent autopsy for verification. Oh, man. A short while later, May 29th, the 4 officers were placed on leave, then fired. And also from the notes is that there was some misinformation circulating the internet that was targeted at Chauvin and essentially started the politicization of the whole thing, because he was supposedly found wearing a Make Whites Great Again and being with Donald Trump in a rally, but those were proven to be false. But again, I don't think the point is that it was true. It's just to incite more hatred. In which, to be honest, when things get political, things just start getting worse. Now, the FBI and soon the Attorney General started investigating this and made it a top priority, and were investigating to see if they could pursue charges and get some justice done. In which, yes, they eventually found charges against him. Mike Freeman, a Hennepin attorney at Minneapolis, Minnesota, charged Officer Derek Chauvin with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. He says he wants to, or it notes that he wants to pursue charges against the other 3 officers, but it didn't mention which charges, or if it's going to happen anytime soon. Now, the protesters first went to the site where he was killed, as they say, which is at that deli, or at least just the area in which he died, and they held a memorial in which it soon began protests, as large numbers of people just started amassing there and holding a memorial for his death. Now, later it turned into a protest as they were going down the street, and it stayed that way for quite a while. However, a section of the protesters soon went and vandalized the police department. And in response to the vandalism and the destruction, the police came out in riot gear to prepare for any more that want to come and do the same. This started leading to a full-fledged riot. And Minnesota was only the beginning. The protests, they started springing all over the United States. New York, California, Georgia, Florida, Colorado, Ohio. I heard there was some in Michigan. There's one that happened in Columbus, Ohio. I don't remember if I mentioned Tennessee. And now in Texas too, in Dallas. Recently I heard there was a protest. And even outside, I live south of a city. And in the city center, or as I like to call it, there's protests going on. And I am praying and hoping that it doesn't turn into these riots, which cause massive destruction. I mean, places were broken into, buildings burned down, robbing and looting. People who were just there amongst the protests getting shot or beaten down. It's turned chaotic. And this is not what we should do in Floyd's name. It's what we should never do. And it's a real shame that these rioters think they're doing something good. Now, this just reminds me of in history during the Civil Rights Movement. Martin Luther King Jr. and another leader called Malcolm X. I don't know if many of you remember Malcolm X, but Martin Luther King Jr. no one will forget. Malcolm X, too, thought it was a good idea to protest against all of the segregational policies, the Jim Crow laws, and the other such wicked laws that separated for no other reason than race. No race is superior to another. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X thought so. However, they had two drastically different ways of going about it. Martin Luther King Jr. was peaceful protest. It's sit-ins in the bars. It's going to places and greeting people. Going to churches and preaching on it. Yes, I like to remember Martin Luther King Jr. as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because he also was a reverend in the church. He loved praying. He loved God. And I am just entirely amazed at such a great thing. He had great values that he wanted to uphold. And I'm praying to the same God as him, the same God for all of us, that we may find peace in this time and put an end to this violence. However, Malcolm X went a different direction. He became radicalized and followed Islamic preaching. Not to say the religion is terrible. There are plenty of people in Islam that do not follow some of these practices. But the teachings, what's in it, there's been taught some violence. And Malcolm X certainly took inspiration from them. He let out riots. He let out beatings and attacks. And ultimately, it was counterproductive. Because more and more people, when they see Malcolm X on the screen, they see what he's doing, they're saying that the officers, they're right to defend themselves. They're right to keep these people locked up and away from the rest. But when they saw Martin Luther King Jr. and his protest, his peaceful protest, and how the violence was done to him by such police and such folks around them, the onlookers, they said, this is terrible. Why are they doing these things? They're not justified in doing this. And the sad thing is, Malcolm X has more relevance today because of these riots. But Malcolm X didn't accomplish his goals. He only further dug himself into a deeper pit. Martin Luther King Jr., Doctor, Reverend, he knew the way. It was hard, but he did it. What's even more disturbing for me is that there are plenty of people out there who are constantly egging on this violence. Don't they understand that things breed alike things? Violence begets violence. Hatred begets hatred. Jobs, hopes, dreams, futures are being burned, are being set to flame and destroyed. Torn down to the foundation, and the foundation's crushed. A firefighter had a building for his future. He wanted to open his own business in that building, but it got burned down because of the rioters. And it's a real shame, it really is, that this is what's going on. These people who are egging on all of these things, all these riots and all the damage, they claim that it's justice for all of the past sins, of all the racism and all the hatred, and to groups that may or may not exist today. Actually, yeah, there are racist people in this world. There's no doubt about it. But to call America the land of the free, the home of the brave, the first nation to end slavery, for other nations to be calling us a racist nation is not okay. And I can't believe that we still have people to this day who think that it's okay to severely punish the children for the sins and the terrible deeds of the fathers and the mothers and their parents and the generations before. That's not how justice works. Justice works by applying punishment that fits the crime. And punishment on lies is injustice. They think they're fighting back against a system of oppression and racism and evil, but all they're doing is destroying their neighbor's home, taking things from them. If you want to fight back against the system, then begin voting. Elect representatives who are discerning, who can say this is racist and this is not, and let's go from there. Let's talk about this. In the memory of Floyd, let's talk about this. For the sake of our nation, let's talk about this. Let's discuss this. Let's debate this. Let's get a better understanding and a talk, a debate, a thought process, conversation. Let's get that started. This is not okay. Even the Floyd family understands that. They abhor what happened to their own family. But they also abhor the protests and the violence that comes from it. One of them even made the note that you can't fight fire with fire. Everything burns, which also reminds me of Spies in Disguise, but still. It's still true even to this day. And I can only hope and pray that we can do whatever we can to stop this violence. We are not worshipers of Malcolm X. We don't uphold the ways of him. We wish to uphold the values that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought for in the ways that he fought for it, because it is in the peaceful ways that things get done. And remember how I said things breed like things? Just as violence begets violence, peace begets peace. Love begets love. I think Jesus was right to say, if you get struck on the one cheek, turn the other. Don't retaliate, is what he's trying to say. Don't fight back. It's reminding me of the game called the Slap Cradle, where you would hold one hand with another person, and you would take turns smacking your playmate's hand, the one you're holding. And then they would have to do it as well. But if you notice, when you slap once, it hurts. When they slap back, it hurts more. And you just keep on going until you're full-fledged trying to chop each other's hands off. That's what's going on here. They're trying to solve this problem by making it worse. But that's not how we solve problems. Thank y'all for listening to me go on a little bit of a rant, and I wish y'all the best. May the Lord be with us all, and as always, be safe out there.